The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the dark void between stars. It was bigger than most planets and home to thousands of different alien species. This was where the Galactic Council made all the important decisions for the galaxy. For over 10,000 years, every species had followed their rules without question. Ambassador Zephyr stood in the center of the great assembly hall. His green skin glowed under the bright lights as he spoke to the hundreds of alien delegates. His voice was angry and filled with worry. The tall, thin creature from the Viridian Empire had never seen anything like what humans were doing. The humans continue to ignore our laws, Zephyr said, his forearms waving in the air. They build new colonies wherever they want. They take resources from planets that belong to other species. They act like they own the entire galaxy. The other aliens in the hall made various sounds of agreement. Some clicked their mandibles, others whistled through their breathing holes, and a few simply nodded their many heads. They all agreed that humans were becoming a big problem. Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office on Earth Defense Force Station Alpha. The human military base orbited Earth's moon and served as the headquarters for all human space operations. Jake was a tough man in his 40s with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had been fighting in space for 20 years and had seen many battles. Admiral Lisa Hamilton walked into his office carrying a datapad. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and a serious expression. As the highest-ranking officer in the Earth Defense Force, she had the difficult job of dealing with alien politics. "Jake, we just received another message from the Council," Lisa said, sitting down across from his desk. "This one is different. They're calling it a final ultimatum." Jake took the datapad and read the message. His face grew dark as he read. Each line, the Council was demanding that humans stop all expansion beyond their current territories. They wanted humans to submit to direct Council oversight of all colonies. They also demanded payment of massive reparations for what they called aggressive colonization. "They want us to become slaves," Jake said, putting the datapad down. "They want to control everything we do," Lisa nodded. "That's exactly what. They want every other species in the galaxy has accepted this kind of control. The Council expects us to do the same." Jake stood up and walked to the window. He could see Earth in the distance, a beautiful blue and green ball hanging in space. Humans had worked hard to spread across the galaxy. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds and created a growing civilization among the stars. "What happens if we refuse?" Jake asked. "Complete isolation," Lisa replied. "No trade, no diplomatic contact, no access to Council-controlled space lanes. They'll cut us off from the rest of the galaxy." Chief Engineer Paul Stevens knocked on the door and entered. He was a young man with blonde hair and grease stains on his uniform. Paul was responsible for maintaining all the technical systems on the station. "Admiral, Captain, I've been monitoring Council communications," Paul said. "They're mobilizing fleets near our borders. This isn't just a threat, they're preparing for action." Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez came in right behind Paul. She was a woman in her 30s with dark hair and sharp eyes. Amy had been listening to alien transmissions for years and understood their languages better than most humans. "The Council is telling their member species to prepare for enforcement." "Action?" Amy reported. "They're talking about humans like we're criminals who need to be punished." Jake looked at his team. These were good people who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. They had families on Earth and friends throughout the colonies. The idea of bowing down to alien masters made him angry. "What do you think we should do?" Jake asked them. Paul spoke first. "Our technology is advancing faster than theirs. We're more creative and adaptable. I think we can handle whatever they throw at us." Amy nodded in agreement. "Every species in the galaxy has accepted. Council ruled because they were afraid. But humans aren't like other species. We don't give up easily." Lisa stood up and walked to the window next to Jake. "I've been in contact with President Carter. She's calling an emergency session of the Earth Alliance. All the colony leaders and military commanders will be there. 3 days later, the Earth Alliance met in the capital city of Geneva. President Helen Carter was a strong woman in her 60s who had led humanity through many difficult times. She sat at the head of a long table surrounded by representatives from every human colony and military unit. Commander Rick Douglas was there representing the outer colonies. He was a man in his 40s who had spent most of his life on the frontier. Worlds. Rick had seen firsthand how humans could thrive in the harshest environments. The Council thinks they can intimidate us like they did everyone else, Rick said during the meeting. But we're not everyone else. We're humans. We don't back down from bullies. The debate lasted for hours. Some representatives worried about the consequences of defying the Council. Others argued that accepting their demands would be the end of human freedom. In the end, the decision was unanimous. President Carter stood up and looked at everyone in the room. We will not submit to the Council's demands. We will not become their slaves. We will reject their authority completely. Commander Rick Douglas was chosen to deliver humanity's response to the Council. He traveled to Nexus Prime on a small diplomatic ship. The aliens expected him to bring news of human surrender. Instead, Rick stood before the assembled Council and spoke words that would change galactic history forever. The human species rejects your ultimatum, Rick said in a clear, strong voice. We reject your authority over us. We will not submit to your control. We will forge our own path among the stars. The great assembly hall fell silent. For the first time in 10,000 years, a species had openly defied the Galactic Council. The aliens stared at Rick in shock and disbelief. Ambassador Zephyr was the first to speak. You cannot be serious. No species has ever refused Council authority. The consequences will be severe. Rick looked directly at the alien ambassador. We understand the consequences. We accept them. Humanity will be free, whatever the cost. As Rick left the station, emergency sessions began throughout the Council. They had never faced such open defiance. The galaxy was about to change forever. Council Fleet Admiral Crixton stood on the bridge of his massive warship, the Eternal Judgment. The alien commander was 12 feet tall with thick gray skin and 6 powerful arms. His species, the Drachmori, had been the Council's military enforcers for 3,000 years. They had never failed to bring rebellious species into line. Deploy the Armada, Crixton ordered in his deep, rumbling voice. Surround human space completely. Nothing gets in or out. Across the galaxy, hundreds of alien warships moved into position. The Council had assembled the largest military force in galactic history. Ships from dozens of different species formed a massive wall around human territory. The blockade stretched across light years of space, covering every possible route to and from human worlds. The aliens were confident this show of force would break human resistance within days. Every other species in the galaxy had surrendered. Immediately, when faced with such overwhelming power, the Council expected humans to be no different. Colonel Danny Wright commanded a small reconnaissance ship called the Silent Runner. He was a quiet man in his 30s with sharp eyes and quick reflexes. Danny had spent years exploring the outer edges of human space, mapping unknown star systems and watching for threats. Amy, are you getting all this? Danny asked his communications officer, Amy. Rodriguez had been transferred to Danny's ship to help analyze alien transmissions. She worked at her station, listening to the chatter between enemy ships. The aliens are talking like this is already over, Amy reported. They think we'll surrender as soon as we see their fleet. Danny studied the tactical display showing enemy ship positions. Something bothered him about what he was seeing. The alien formation looked impressive, but it had serious flaws. Look at their positioning, Danny said to his crew. They're focused on intimidation, not actual blockade duty. There are gaps everywhere. His pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, leaned over to look at the display. You're right. They've never had to deal with someone who actually wanted to fight back. Ugh. On Earth, Dr. Susan Clark worked frantically in her research laboratory. She was a brilliant scientist in her 40s, with messy brown hair and thick glasses. For years, she had been developing new technologies in secret, preparing for the day when humanity might need them. Kevin, bring me the quantum field generator. Susan called to her assistant. Kevin Brooks was a young engineer who had joined Susan's team straight from university. He was eager to prove himself and worked harder than anyone else in the lab. "Dr. Clark, the field tests are showing positive results," Kevin reported. "The phase-shifting technology actually works." Susan smiled for the first time in weeks. Her team had developed something the aliens had never seen before. Human ships could now phase through conventional energy barriers using quantum tunneling technology. "Lisa, start preparing the first prototype for field testing," Susan ordered. Lisa Parker was the team's senior engineer, a woman in her 30s who could build anything if given enough time and resources. She had been working on the ship modifications for months. "The phase drive is ready for installation," Lisa reported. "We can have the first ship ready in 12 hours. Captain Tony Martinez received his orders at dawn. He was a cargo ship captain who had spent years running supplies between human colonies. Tony was a tough man in his 40s with calloused hands and a weathered face from years in space. "You want me to do what?" Tony asked Admiral Hamilton over the communication link. "Take your ship through the blockade," Lisa Hamilton replied. "Colony 7 is running low on medical supplies. People will die if we don't get help to them." Tony looked at his small cargo ship, the Lucky Strike. It was old and battered, but it had never let him down. The new phase drive had been installed overnight by Lisa Parker's team. "I'll get through," Tony promised. "Those people are counting on U.S." Tony's ship approached the alien blockade at full speed. The enemy sensors detected him immediately, and massive alien warships moved to intercept. Energy beams flashed through space as the aliens tried to stop the human vessel. "Activating phase drive," Tony announced to his small crew. The Lucky Strike flickered and became transparent. The alien energy beams passed right through the ship as if it wasn't there. Tony flew his vessel directly between two enemy warships, invisible to their sensors. "We're through," Tony shouted as his ship returned to normal space on the other side of the blockade. The alien fleet commanders watched in confusion as the human ship disappeared and reappeared beyond their lines. They had never seen anything like it before. General Patricia Lee coordinated the human response from her command center on Mars. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had fought in every major human conflict for the past 20 years. Patricia understood that this would be a long war, not a quick surrender. "We need to organize resistance networks on every colony," Patricia told her staff. "The aliens expect us to give up quickly. Instead, we're going to fight them for as long as it takes." Colony Administrator Carl Thompson received Patricia's orders on the frontier world of New Texas. He was a man in his 40s who had helped build the colony from nothing. Carl knew every settler personally and would do anything to protect them. "We're not soldiers," Carl said during a meeting with the colonists. "But we're not going to let aliens tell us how to live." Commander Nicole Turner arrived on New Texas with a team of military trainers. She was a woman in her 30s who specialized in guerrilla warfare tactics. Nicole had studied how smaller forces could defeat larger ones throughout human history. "The aliens are used to fighting formal battles," Nicole explained to the colonists. "But we're going to fight dirty. We'll hit them where they don't expect it and disappear before they can respond." More supply ships began slipping through the blockade. Each successful run proved that human ingenuity could overcome alien technology. The phase drives worked perfectly, allowing ships to become invisible to enemy sensors. The council leaders watched their blockade fail with growing alarm. Species that had submitted to council rule for thousands of years were starting to ask questions. If humans could defy the council, why couldn't they? Ambassador Zephyr called an emergency session of the council leadership. The assembly hall was filled with worried alien representatives. "The humans are not behaving like other species," Zephyr reported. "They're not intimidated by our show of force. Instead, they're preparing for extended resistance." Supreme Chancellor Voxmyron, the ancient leader of the council, spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. "No species has ever resisted us for more than a few days. The humans will break eventually." But deep down, the council leaders were beginning to Worry, they had never faced an enemy that grew stronger through conflict. The humans were not like other species, and that made them dangerous. Colonel Danny Wright's reconnaissance ship continued to monitor the alien fleet. He watched as confusion spread through their ranks. The aliens had expected quick victory, not prolonged resistance. "They're not ready for this kind of fight," Danny reported to Admiral Hamilton. "We might actually have a chance," the blockade continued, but it was already failing. Human determination and creativity were proving stronger than alien technology and numbers. The galaxy was beginning to change. War Master Talvex was angry. The massive alien commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Edge, watching the failed blockade reports scroll across his screens. His species, the Zephyrians, were known throughout the galaxy as the most skilled warriors. They had conquered hundreds of worlds for the Council over the centuries. "The blockade has failed," Talvex growled to his officers. "The humans make fools of us with their tricks. It is time for direct action." The Zephyrian battle fleet was the pride of the Council's military. 50 massive warships armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. Talvex had never lost a battle in his 300 years of service. "Target the human colony on Kepler 7, Talvex ordered. "We will show them what happens when they defy the Council." Colony 7 was a small farming world on the edge of human space. 5,000 colonists lived there, growing food for the other human settlements. The colony had no military defenses and only a few security officers to keep the peace. Lieutenant Commander Steve Johnson commanded the colony's small security force. He was a young man in his 20s who had joined the Earth Defense Force hoping for adventure. Instead, he had spent 2 years handling minor disputes between farmers and checking supply shipments. "Sir, we have 50 alien warships approaching," reported his communications officer, Jenny Walsh. She was a woman in her early 20s who had never seen real combat. Steve looked at the tactical display and felt his stomach sink. The alien fleet was massive compared to his tiny force. He had 3 converted patrol boats and a dozen security officers. The colonists had some mining equipment and cargo ships, but nothing that could fight a real battle. "Jenny, send a message to all ships in the system," Steve ordered. "Tell them we need every vessel that can fly." Sally Adams was the colony's chief mechanic. She was a tough woman in her 40s who could fix anything with an engine. Sally had spent years modifying mining equipment and cargo haulers to work better in space. "Steve, I can turn these cargo ships into something useful," Sally said over the radio. "Give me 12 hours and some volunteers." "You have 6 hours," Steve replied. "That's all the time we have." Sally and her team worked frantically to modify the civilian ships. They welded armor plating onto cargo haulers and mounted mining lasers on transport vessels. The modifications were crude but effective. "These ships weren't built for fighting," Sally warned. "But they'll give those aliens a surprise?" The Zephyrian fleet arrived expecting an easy victory. War Master Talvex saw the small human force waiting for them and laughed. The human ships looked like toys compared to his massive warships. "Begin the attack," Talvex ordered. "Destroy them all." The alien ships opened fire with their energy weapons. Bright beams of destruction cut through space toward the human vessels. But the humans didn't fight like other species. Instead of forming neat battle lines, they scattered in all directions. Steve Johnson led his small force with tactics no alien had ever seen. The humans used asteroids for cover, popping out to fire quick shots before disappearing again. They targeted the alien ships' engines and weapon systems instead of trying to destroy them completely. "Hit and run," Steve called over the radio. "And don't let them pin you down." Captain Ben Carter commanded a converted mining ship called the Rock Hopper. He was a man in his 30s who had spent years dodging asteroid fields while mining valuable metals. Ben knew how to fly in dangerous places. "Following you, Steve," Ben replied as he guided his ship behind a large asteroid. "These aliens don't know how to fight in asteroid fields." The aliens became confused and frustrated. They were used to formal battles where ships lined up and exchanged fire until one side was destroyed. The humans fought like ghosts, appearing and disappearing before the aliens could respond. Dr. Rachel Murphy watched the battle from the colony's research station. She was a xenobiologist who had studied alien species for years. Rachel had noticed something important about how the different council species behaved. "Steve, target their command ships first," Rachel called over the radio. "Most of these species are hive-minded. If you disrupt their leadership, they become confused." Steve followed Rachel's advice. He led his small force in a desperate attack. On the alien flagship, the humans swarmed around the massive ship like angry bees, firing at its communication arrays and command centers. War Master Tulvex watched in amazement as his carefully planned attack fell apart. His officers were calling for orders, but the human attacks had damaged their communication systems. The other alien ships were receiving conflicting commands and starting to fight ineffectively. "How are they doing this?" Tulvex demanded. "They have only a few small ships." Commander Frank Davis flew his converted cargo hauler directly at the alien flagship. He was a man in his 50s who had fought in several border conflicts. Frank understood that sometimes the best defense was a good offense. "This is for humanity," Frank shouted as he rammed his ship into the alien vessel's main engine. The explosion damaged the flagship severely. Other human pilots followed Frank's example, using their ships as weapons when their guns ran out of ammunition. The aliens had never seen such desperate courage. Major Sandra Wright arrived with reinforcements just as the battle reached its climax. She commanded a small squadron of actual military vessels that had been patrolling nearby. Sandra was a woman in her 40s who had trained for space combat her entire career. "Steve, we're here to help," Sandra called as her ships joined the fight. Working together, the humans managed to capture an alien cruiser that had been damaged in the fighting. Chief Technology Officer Mike Anderson led a team of engineers who quickly began studying the alien technology. "This is incredible," Mike reported as he examined the alien ship systems. "Their technology is advanced, but it's not very creative. We can improve on this." The Battle of Colony 7 ended with a human victory. The Zephyr fleet retreated, leaving behind their damaged cruiser and hundreds of dead warriors. The humans had lost several ships and brave pilots, but they had proven something important. News of the victory spread quickly through human space. The colonies that had been afraid began preparing for their own defenses. If Colony 7 could defeat a council battle fleet, other worlds could do the same. War Master Tulvex reported his defeat to the council with shame. "The humans do not fight like other species," he explained. "They are unpredictable and willing to sacrifice everything for victory." The council leaders realized they faced a new kind of enemy. The humans were not just refusing to surrender. They were actually winning battles against superior forces through creativity and determination. Admiral Lisa Hamilton studied the battle reports from her command center. She saw how human tactics had confused and defeated the aliens. The humans were learning to fight a different kind of war. "Send these tactics to all colonies," Lisa ordered. "Every human settlement needs to know how to fight like this." The galaxy was changing. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council was losing battles. The humans had shown that the great galactic empire could be beaten by courage and ingenuity. Captain LaVey Bennett stood on the bridge of the Terran Starfire, the first ship built entirely with improved alien technology. She was a woman in her 30s with short black hair and determined eyes. Lavra had been chosen to lead humanity's first strike force into enemy territory. "All ships report ready," announced her tactical officer, Lieutenant Gary Wilson. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet consisted of 20 ships, each one equipped with the best human modifications of captured alien technology. Lavra looked at the star map showing Council space. For months, human forces had been defending their colonies and winning battles. Now it was time to take the fight to the enemy. "Set course for the Altair system," Lavra ordered. "It's time to hunt some Council leaders." Far across the galaxy, the Council faced chaos unlike anything in their history. Speaker Velenoth of the Altarian Collective stood before the emergency assembly, his tentacles waving in distress. "The human victories are spreading rebellion throughout our territory," Velenoth reported. 12 species have declared independence. In the past month, our empire is falling apart. The ancient aliens in the assembly hall made sounds of panic and confusion. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten how to deal with real threats. Intelligence Officer Greg Adams worked at his station aboard the Terran Starfire. He was a quiet man in his 20s who had spent years studying alien communications and behavior patterns. Greg had been tracking Council leadership movements for weeks. "Captain, I found something big," Greg reported. "The Council's mobile command center is hiding in the Vega system. It's a massive ship called the Sovereign's Will." Lavra studied the intelligence data on her screen. The Sovereign's Will was larger than most space stations and protected by an entire fleet of warships. It served as the Council's headquarters when they needed to move quickly. "How do we get close enough to capture it?" Lavra asked. "The ship follows predictable patrol routes," Greg explained. "If we can get ahead of them, we might be able to set up an ambush." Engineer Ryan Clark had been working on modifications to the human ship's jump drives. He was a young man in his 20s who understood alien technology better than most of his colleagues. Ryan had discovered that human engineering could improve almost any alien system. "Captain, I've figured out how to eliminate the charging time between jumps," Ryan reported. "Our ships can now jump from system to system instantly, while the aliens still need to wait between jumps." Lavra smiled. This was exactly the kind of advantage humans needed. "How long before all ships are upgraded?" 6 hours, Ryan replied. "But we'll need to shut down engines completely during the modification process." The human fleet found a hidden asteroid field to make their modifications. Ryan and his team worked frantically to install the new jump drives in every ship. The aliens would never expect humans to move so quickly through space. Commander Scott Thompson led a special boarding team trained for ship-to-ship combat. He was a man in his 40s who had served in the military for 20 years. Scott understood that capturing enemy leaders alive was more valuable than destroying them. "Remember, we need prisoners," Scott told his team. "The Council leaders know things that could end this war faster." The chase began when the human fleet intercepted the Sovereign's Will near a gas giant. The Council command ship was enormous, protected by 50 escort vessels and armed with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Lavra ordered. "Hit their escorts first, then go for the command ship." The battle was unlike anything the aliens had ever experienced. Human ships appeared and disappeared around the enemy fleet, using their improved jump drives to strike from impossible angles. The aliens couldn't predict where the humans would appear next. Captain Derek Wilson commanded the fighter squadron attached to the fleet. He was a man in his 30s who had trained as a pilot since childhood. Derek led his small, fast ships in coordinated attacks that confused the alien defenders. "They're trying to surround us," Derek called over the radio. "But we're too fast for them." The human fighters swarmed around the alien ships like angry insects. They targeted weapon systems and shield generators, weakening the larger vessels for the main attack. The Sovereign's Will tried to escape, but Ryan Clark's modifications made the human ships faster than anything the aliens had. Laura's fleet stayed with the massive command ship through 3 star systems. "We have them cornered," Lavra announced. "All ships prepare for boarding action." Scott Thompson's team used cutting charges to break through the Sovereign's Will's hull. The humans fought their way through corridors filled with alien defenders. The Council's elite guards had never faced human soldiers in close combat. The aliens were stronger and had better weapons, but the humans were more creative and determined. Scott's team used explosives and improvised weapons to overcome their enemies. "Council chamber secured," Scott reported as his team captured the ship's command center. "We have prisoners." The intelligence Scott's team recovered was incredible. The Council's secret files revealed the location of their hidden fortress, a place called the Eternal Throne. For over 10,000 years, this facility had remained completely secret. It's in the Centauri Nebula, Greg Adams reported as he studied the captured data. The nebula hides it from all sensors. No wonder we could never find it. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Janet Miller worked with rebel groups throughout Council space. She was a woman in her 40s who specialized in working with alien cultures. Janet had learned to communicate with dozens of different species. "The humans are winning," Janet told a gathering of rebel leaders. "Your people can be free if you help us fight the Council." The Korathi Mining Guild was one of the first groups to openly rebel. Foreman Grixtal, a massive, rock-like creature, had grown tired of the Council's demands for tribute. "My people have mined metals for the Council for 1,000 years, Grixtal rumbled. "We have received nothing in return. The humans offer us partnership, not slavery." The rebellion spread faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been conquered centuries ago remembered what freedom meant. They began attacking Council facilities and refusing to pay tribute. The captured Council leaders were brought to Admiral Hamilton for questioning. The ancient aliens had never been prisoners before and didn't understand what was happening to them. "Your empire is finished," Lisa Hamilton told the Council Patriarch during interrogation. "Your own people are rebelling against you." The alien leader's response shocked everyone. "This is impossible. The Council has ruled for 10,000 years. We are the natural order of the galaxy, not anymore," Lisa replied. "The galaxy is changing." Back on the Terran Starfire, Lavra Bennett prepared her fleet for the most dangerous mission yet. The Eternal Throne was the heart of Council power. If they could capture it, the war would be over. "All ships, prepare for jump to the Centauri." "Nebula," Lavra ordered. "We're going to finish this." The human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, heading for the final battle. Behind them, the galaxy burned with rebellion as species after species declared their independence from Council rule. The ancient order was crumbling, and humanity was leading the charge toward freedom. The Centauri Nebula was a massive cloud of gas and dust that stretched across several star systems. Hidden deep within its swirling colors was the Eternal Throne, the secret fortress where the Council's true power lived. For 10,000 years, no enemy had ever found this place. Admiral Chris Baker commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Over 200 ships from every human colony had joined the final assault. Chris was a man in his 50s who had fought in space battles his entire career, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. "All ships, maintain radio silence," Chris ordered. "We need to get close before they detect us." The nebula played havoc with sensors and communications. The swirling gases made it impossible for long-range detection systems to work properly. This had protected the Eternal Throne for centuries, but now it would help the humans get close. Colonel Maria Santos led the infiltration team that would enter the fortress from the inside. She was a woman in her 40s who specialized in covert operations. Maria had studied the fortress plans captured from the Sovereign's will and knew exactly where to strike. "Remember, we need to reach the Council chamber before the main assault begins," Maria told her team. "Once the shooting starts, they might try to escape." The Eternal Throne was bigger than most moons. Its ancient walls were covered with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Thousands of alien soldiers guarded every entrance and corridor. The fortress had never been successfully attacked in its long history. Captain Derek Wilson led the fighter attack that would begin the battle. His squadron had been modified with the best human technology and piloted by volunteers from every colony. Derek knew that many of his pilots would not survive the coming fight. "All fighters, follow my lead," Derek called over the radio. "We need to clear a path for the main force." The space battle began when Derek's fighters emerged from the nebula and attacked the fortress defenses. The ancient weapon systems came alive, filling space with deadly energy beams. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as they fought to get close, but the humans had learned how to fight against superior technology. They used swarm tactics, overwhelming the fortress defenses with sheer numbers. For every human ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Defensive grid is failing," reported Lieutenant Commander Beth Anderson from her assault ship. "We're getting through," Inside the fortress, Sergeant First Class Matt Rodriguez led the ground assault on the main entrance. He was a young man in his 20s who had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the mission. Matt and his team had to fight through corridors filled with alien defenders. "Keep moving," Matt shouted as laser fire filled the hallway around them. "We can't let them stop us here." The alien guards inside the fortress had never faced human soldiers. They were used to formal, predictable battles. The humans fought with desperate creativity, using explosives and improvised weapons to overcome their enemies. Colonel Maria Santos and her infiltration team reached the council chamber through maintenance tunnels. The ancient aliens inside had ruled the galaxy for so long they could not believe anyone would dare attack their sacred fortress. The council patriarch sat on his crystal throne, surrounded by the oldest and most powerful aliens in the galaxy. He was a creature so ancient that his species had been forgotten by most of the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice echoed with the authority of 10,000 years. "Impossible," the patriarch whispered as human soldiers burst into the chamber. "No one can reach this place. No one can defy the eternal order." Maria Santos stood before the alien ruler with her weapon raised. Behind her, the sounds of battle echoed through the fortress as human forces fought their way deeper into the structure. "Your eternal order is over," Maria said. "The galaxy belongs to everyone now, not just you." At that moment, President Helen Carter arrived on the human flagship. She had insisted on being present for this final confrontation. Helen was the leader who had made the decision to reject council authority, and she wanted to see it through to the end. "Patch me through to the fortress," Helen ordered. The communication system crackled to life, carrying Helen's voice to every corner of the eternal throne. Her words were also broadcast to rebel forces throughout the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," Helen began, "for 10,000 years you have lived under the rule of tyrants who claimed the right to control your lives. Today that ends." Inside the council chamber, the ancient aliens listened in growing horror as Helen continued speaking. "We are humans, and we believe that every species has the right to choose its own destiny. We did not come here as conquerors. We came as liberators." The council patriarch struggled to understand what was happening. In his long life, he had never encountered beings who rejected the natural order of ruler and ruled. "You must submit," the patriarch said to Maria Santos. "It is the way things have always been? The strong rule the weak, the ancient rule the young?" "Not anymore," Maria replied. "We are all equal under the stars." The battle for the fortress reached its climax as human forces captured the central control room. The ancient weapon systems shut down one by one as human engineers took control. The eternal throne, unconquerable for 10 millennia, fell to human determination. Captain Derek Wilson's fighters swept through the fortress hangar bays, preventing any council ships from escaping. The human fleet surrounded the massive structure completely. "Fortress secured," Admiral Baker reported to President Carter. "The council's military command is destroyed." Throughout the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. Species that had been enslaved for centuries celebrated their freedom. The Korathi Mining Guild declared independence. The Altarian Collective threw off their chains. Dozens of other species followed their example. The rebellion became a revolution. The Council's empire collapsed as member species realized they no longer had to obey the ancient tyrants. Freedom spread from world to world like wildfire. 3 months later, Ambassador Julie Thompson sat in a conference room on the neutral world of Haven Station. She was a woman in her 40s who had been chosen to help create a new government for the galaxy. Around the table sat representatives from dozens of newly free species. "The Free Worlds Alliance will be based on voluntary cooperation," Julie explained. "No species will be forced to join. No one will be forced to obey laws they did not help create." The former council species struggled to understand this new concept. They had lived with tyranny for so long that freedom seemed impossible. "What if there are disputes between worlds?" asked Speaker Velenoth of the Altarians. "We will talk and find solutions together," Julie replied. "Free people can always find ways to work together." The new government was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one ruling species controlling everyone else, all species had equal voices. Decisions were made by discussion and agreement, not force. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted after his years of fighting, stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha. He looked out at the stars and thought about how much had changed. The galaxy was free and humanity had shown the way. "We did it," Jake said to Admiral Hamilton, who had joined him at the window. "Yes," Lisa replied, "but now comes the hard part. It's easier to fight a war than to build a lasting peace." The galaxy was entering a new age. For the first time in 10,000 years, every species had the right to choose its own path among the stars. The Council's tyranny was over, replaced by a confederation of free worlds working together. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had liberated it. The greatest victory was not won through superior weapons or technology, but through the simple belief that all intelligent beings deserved freedom. The stars belonged to everyone now.